So for those who are kind of discovering Clipchamp, Clipchamp is one of the more exciting brands in Brisbane at the moment. They've had a great 12 months with a lot of validation and some investment and encouragement. So Clipchamp is a global video editing platform that empowers anyone to tell stories worth sharing. And with both an in-browser video editor and mobile app, Clipchamp is working towards making video creation accessible to all. So we've got a fantastic panel coming at us from a couple of different perspectives across the business. We'll be talking with Alex, Anna, and Jase. So let me introduce Alex, and we can get started. So prior to founding Clipchamp, Alex was alumni of mine, was an associate professor, industry focus chair and digital innovation theme lead at QUT, as well as research program manager at SAP. Over the past 15 years, Alex has been driving an agenda of digital innovation across each of his roles. At SAP, he was responsible for working with customers on entirely new product ideas. Together with Google, he drove the first major visible collaboration between SAP and Google. At QUT, he founded the Aviation Innovation Network, drove Brisbane Airport's digital strategy, and led digital disruption theme at QUT's Institute for Future Environments. At Clipchamp, he oversees the launch of several products, the growth of Clipchamp's platform to more than 10 million registered users, and secured recent funding in excess of $11 million US from a variety of sources, including one of our local innovators, Steve Baxter. I put that bit in. So we'd like to welcome Alex, and I'm just going to share the screen.
Louise, I thought I'm going to share.
Yep, I'm just going, yep, feel free to share.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much for that introduction, Louise. I amazingly, when you were just talking about the digital strategy of Brisbane Airport, just reviewing that we're in a Zoom meeting, and about 7 or 8 years ago, I said like video conferencing is definitely going to be a competitor to aviation, like whether you want it or not. And here we are, for not the reasons that I anticipated, obviously, but interestingly, it's still to a certain extent happened. So yeah, so today we're talking about Clipchamp, and for those of you who haven't seen or heard about it, we are the world's first purely in-browser video editing platform. So basically, we build a timeline editor that people can access by going to clipchamp.com. No downloads required, no uploads of big media files into the cloud required. It's a very safe, secure, fast solution. What you see is what it's going to look like towards the end of the year. So I thought, like, when we're in an exciting forum, we may as well show what the immediate future is going to look like for us. So the current version, when you log in, looks slightly different from this, but this is what it's going to look like in the very near future. As Louise was saying, our mission is to empower anyone to tell stories worth sharing. There are a lot of stories out there, and what we see at the moment is that video is just one of those very complicated domains. Every single video that gets professionally or semi-professionally produced touches somewhat between 4 and 7 different platforms. And that's everything from ideation to sourcing and shooting of raw material, to the editing process, approval workflows between clients and agencies or within larger organizations, color grading, hosting, sharing, viewing, and then analytics. And the downside is really that, like, you either know all of this stuff, which basically means you're a professional and very likely a very creative person, or you can pay someone who knows all of this stuff, right? So video, from a viewing perspective, is an extremely accessible medium, and we all got conditioned by the big tech companies in the world to consume everything through video, but creating high impact video remains hard. And that is really what we're trying to change. Our vision is therefore a very easy end-to-end platform that's enjoyable, easy to use, and that will allow users to do everything from ideation, shooting, editing, collaboration, discussion, and distribution, of video at some stage in the future. At the moment, we're in this editing category, but obviously we're trying to go sideways as fast as we can. It's just nailing one thing after another is the challenge. In terms of where we are, Louise kind of mentioned it already, but there's a lot of users, registered users that we have. We have basically users in all countries. The asterisk is because when we became an American company last year, we all of a sudden were facing US federal export restrictions. So we had to clamp down on usage in some countries that we did have users before, but that the US is not very friendly with. We're supporting thousands of brands. You know, people are creating more than 500K videos in a month. Trustpilot ratings are really high, given we're a consumer creator platform. And we have a lot of organizations in our database that have 5 or more users, which suggests that there's a certain amount of virality going on as well, which again is fantastic for us to see. So coming over to how we see product, there's really 3 things that if you, you know, that I want you to take from my part, and I'll try to keep this as short as possible because undoubtedly you want to hear from our amazing product team at Clipchamp. And Jase in a few minutes. But for us, product is really a team sport. The main value-adding organizational unit that we have in the company is a cross-functional squad. And every single squad consists of a number of developers, so usually somewhat between 3 and 5. And then there's a product manager, a product designer, as well as a growth marketer. And the idea is that every single one of those roles has, you know, a certain core skill set and a certain knowledge and a certain way of working that if those 2 people collaborate very closely, magic's happening, right? And the way we see this is if you're in product, you really understand user cohorts and competition, and what you can really properly articulate is some sort of product or platform vision, and you do this through research. And Jase will talk a little bit about, you know, how research unfolds for us. When you're in design, you really understand user behavior, you can articulate a user experience, and you usually do this through UI designs. So that's your core contribution, your core skill. When you're in engineering, you understand all the technical constraints, you can articulate an architecture, software design, or products, and you do this through code. And when you're in growth, you really understand what the levers are. You can articulate a growth plan and opportunities, and you can do this through numbers and charts. The main thing from our perspective is that when you look at some of the features, for instance, that we have, we introduced video sharing and hosting, and that was a growth experiment that came out of growth, right? We have features in the platform such as clip drop that allow you to get a video from your mobile straight into Create. And we do this in a way that is, you really got to have a very technical mind to understand that that is even possible. So that came out of tech. The fact that we have a screen cam, a webcam recorder, that was possible because an engineer discovered, hey, Google has a new API that we can tap into. So how about we build this, right? Product also goes like, we have a freehand feature. Product went like, okay, well, 9 out of 10 people want this feature. So it kind of makes sense to build it. So what I'm trying to say is, like, independent of which function you're in, when you're in a product squad, the inspiration for you know, what we're building can come from either one of those functions. What's important is that we're not marketing driven or engineering driven or sales driven, design or product led. Or actually, well, we are product led in a sense that product for us is a team sport. So it's really, really important that, you know, we play this and that not one function rules the others. The second thing I want you to take away from my part of the presentation is really that, you know, we have this product-led growth, but again, product in the wider sense, like all those 4 functions together. I have to apologize to everyone in here that has a marketing background and is sitting in a marketing function. But one of our very close and trusted advisors, I've asked him once, like, I'm not going to say the name. So, mate, when do you actually get marketing in? Like, when do you sort of ramp this up? And his answer, you know, it's like I can literally like picture him saying it and hearing it. But he said, like, why do you need marketing? You know, if you need marketing, then your product's broken. And that paradigm kind of is sticky for us. So we do have marketing, we do have growth, right? And we think it's a very important function in the business. So don't get me wrong. But if you have the choice between marketing a broken product or not marketing a working product, I take the second one any day of the week. Because at the end of the day, if you have a product that speaks for itself, that people love using, that people want to come back to, that people recommend, that people become like passionate missionaries for, then you've achieved something that is very, very difficult to achieve by just having an excellent marketing function with a broken product. So for us, it's really, we live this product-led growth paradigm. And there's a whole venture industry out there. There's a whole part of the SaaS economy and the tech industry that follows that product-led growth and sort of is really like driven by fundamentally different metrics than some of the other platforms that are in the B2B sales-driven space, for instance. And the third thing that I want you to take away is product really needs to be built into the culture, and we do our best efforts to really do this. So we're an organization that defines itself through its product, right? When we talk about Clipchamp, what is Clipchamp? Then we're showing an in-browser video editing platform, right? And if you are an organization that defines itself through its product, you cannot run product as a sideshow. It's not just a thing that sits next to all the other corporate functions that you have, but it's the most important thing that you have to get under control. And when you look at our values, so we have 6 company values. We're here for our users. That's the top one. That's usually the one that we put, very first. We're not building a bad product and something that allows us to exploit our users. We're trying to do the right thing for them, right? We're trying to build the right product that convinces them, to give some commercial value back to us. Be bold and move fast. Like in particular when something's broken, in particular when we see that, we've built something where there's friction, we try to sort of, just rectify it as quickly as we can, and take bold action in the interest of our users. Persevere and learn, really important for us. We have one of the initiatives that Jase is overseeing is our mobile app, and I'm sure he talks more about this in a few minutes, or maybe, I'm not sure, but I suspect he will. But that was a perfect example for, if those 4 functions work together, how fast and how far they can go. We launched a mobile app 3 months ago, and there were like growth built some beautiful charts that showed the adoption and the activation, and we saw a big drop in step 5 out of 7 or 8 or so that were important for us. The fact that we could see this basically in version 1 meant that we could like immediately try to understand what's going on here. So the team got together with a bunch of users, try to really understand why are we dropping off here, fixed it in version 2 or 3, relaunch. We saw massive jump there. So our ability to, not continuing the same things and expecting a different outcome, but sort of go like, okay, well, we haven't achieved what we want, so let's try to do something different, and sort of learn from it. Think bigger than yourself. We really need to do things in teams. It's not that I'm a marketer, I can do this, I don't need you guys. That doesn't work for us, right? We need people to collaborate. We need people to collaborate in their squads, and we need them to respect each other's professional contributions. Drive positive change means, we're not just like, you can tell stories through video that aren't positive, and we're less interested in that. So, we're not sacrificing that value, for commercial goal by becoming, the world's platform to create hate videos or illegal stuff. And last but not least, we want people to enjoy the ride. So, if you display all those other values, then, you're a very good candidate for being in a position to do so. So, but I guess, yeah, the third thing that I want you to take away, that it's really, really important that we, if you want to do product properly, then you have to build it into your culture and create your values around this. So product's a team sport, product-led growth, it's its own discipline in the SaaS industry that is fundamentally different from how B2B SaaS companies run, and product needs to be built into your culture. And with that, I'll hand over to Anna.
Thanks, Alex. Before we let Anna, I'll just jump in and intro Anna. So welcome Anna to the stage. Anna is the head of product over at Clipchamp. She's a senior business leader with a decade of experience in product growth, entrepreneurship, and management. She's consulted for a wide range of technology startups such as Delivery Hero, Hotel Tonight, Waddle, which was then acquired by Xero. Prior to Clipchamp, she established the digital and growth business unit at Tyro, a fully licensed tech business bank. As the head of digital, her team achieved 10 times business growth and generated in excess of $46 million worth of revenue during her 2-year tenure. She's just joined Clipchamp full-time from the 5th of April in 2018. So now serving as the head of product and is responsible for establishing the product management function and leading Clipchamp's entire product portfolio. So I'm going to hand over to Anna.
Minimize my screen so I can see people's faces, which is actually quite important for the next thing I'm going to do. So I want to start off by asking everyone here, have you ever signed up to a gym membership and then ended up not really going? So put your hand up if you've done that. Okay, there's quite a few of you guys. Yep, okay. So there's quite a few, like just, you know, visually observing, it's about 50%, right? So the ratio is actually about 90%. And the gyms knows this. So why do we sign up for a yearly plan usually for something that's predictably useless for us? The reason for this is because as humans, we're actually really, really bad at predicting our own future behavior. And this is due to a really wide range of non-cognitive biases that we have. And yet there's this really cliched advice in product land where you're basically told to talk to your customers. It's as if we can just go and talk to the customers and go, hey mate, what do you want us to build for you? And they would tell us it's A or B. And then you go and voila, you have the perfect solution. Now, fortunately for us product professionals, and unfortunately for the greater good of innovation and progress, it's not that simple, right? So what do you do if we can't just go and talk to our customers and take their words for it? Advice is don't ask them about the future, ask them about their past. We're really terrible at predicting our own future behavior, but our past behavior is a great predictor of our future. And Jase is going to take you through how we do, you know, customer interview and actually talk to customers here at Clipchamp. And when done right, target customer interviews can help you deeply understand their beliefs, expectations, their problems, and their context. Now, assuming you've done all of the right things and you know what the likely problems are, and your product team comes up with a great solution, how do you know that the solution is actually going to solve their problems? And if it does, how many customers will adopt it?
Place, and that's the one where it really got away from us in this last few weeks. So
okay, there's a bit of a background noise, but that's okay. So how would we know that there's going to be adoption for the product, right? And how would we know how many of them would actually pay for the product? And we can't just go and ask customers, are you going to pay for it for this? Because that's a future tense. So what do we do in this situation? Luckily, there is a method to this madness. So we have at our disposal a great range of different user research methods. Now, I'm just showing the quadrant of user research here instead of showing the different methods. But generally speaking, on the top, you have behavioral research methods. And what that tells you is how the customer is going to behave in their natural environment. And on the bottom, you have attitudinal. So that's what they believe, what they say to you, and how they think they're going to behave, right? So those sort of talk to your customer type of user research sits on the bottom left-hand corner, and they're really, really valuable. But in order for you to actually know, are they actually going to behave the way they said they will? You have to adopt what's on the top right-hand corner, which is behavioral and quantitative. So my talk today will mostly cover one of these methodologies called experiments. I'm sure a lot of you have run experiments, well, sometimes really well, sometimes badly, but it's actually a really, really useful technique to ensure that you can validate or invalidate the problems and solutions that you've discovered. And it'll also help you answer questions like, how much will they pay, or how many of them will pay you? And once you have those type of answers, you can actually quantify what type of effort you want to put into developing the solution. So to recap the learning so far, user interviews alone, unfortunately, won't give you the complete picture. It's best to pair attitudinal research with behavioral research for new products or features, especially the ones that are quite expensive to deliver. So let's go through two different types of scenarios where an experiment would be really useful. The first scenario is the one that I was referring to previously, and that's where my talk is mostly going to be talking about today. So that's to test a hypothesis about your product that can be quite expensive to deliver. An example here at Clipchamp is during one of the, many of the user research that was conducted, we found out that captioning is a really painful problem in video creation. And our hypothesis was our customers have an appetite to use and also pay for easy captioning. But the problem was we've also figured out that's actually quite difficult to develop the solution. So how do we know whether it's worth it, right? The second type of scenario is also really valuable, but I won't really be covering. That's when you want to gradually launch something that's already developed. So let's dive in and have a look at how you can design a really effective experiment. Now, experiments come from science. I'm sure most of us have maybe learned it or maybe forgotten about it back in school where we learned how to run an experiment. And there's really 5 different steps to it. So the first step is observation. And in the context of product, an observation is really just your research findings. Usually that's qualitative or attitudinal type of research, right? So either talking to customers or you're discovering things from your survey feedback, or sometimes it's product analytics. And once you have that observation, you form a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is really just a testable prediction for an assumption that you have about your product. It'll state what's been changed about your product, what you think the outcome will look like, and why you think that's the case. Now, the outcome of your experiment will hopefully help you prove or disprove the hypothesis. And then the next step is you design an experiment based on the hypothesis that you have. And there's 2 parts to this. So the first part is you have to formulate a success metric, right? So in the previous example of captioning, the success metric would be what's the difference of revenue conversion between the group of people who doesn't have captioning and the group of people who does have captioning, who's got captioning now. And the funny thing about designing an experiment is what you're effectively trying to do here, the whole point of this is you're trying to validate something and see the results for something that you haven't built yet, right? You're trying to de-risk the resources that you're investing. So how do you do that? There's 2 different methods I generally recommend. The first method is called a fake door experiment. So what a fake door experiment is it creates a minimal visual part of a new feature. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's like an upgrade modal we created for captioning. And when the customer click on it, we tell them that, hey, actually, this is something we're considering right now, and please leave your details. And we and effectively, it's asking them to upgrade or simulate the action they would have taken. Now, you're probably thinking, Alex mentioned that our most important value that we prioritize is, like we actually really care about our users, right? They come first. This is probably going to piss off our users. And yes, it will. But you've got to minimize, you can actually minimize upsetting the users. And sometimes you can basically cancel that out by offering them benefits and incentives. So you can offer them a discount code or offer them something that might be a selective bonus for these customers because they've actually participated and helped you come to a conclusion, right? Now, you can also go one step further than just a fake door experiment and conduct what's called a Wizard of Oz or concierge experiment. This is when instead of just, showing them the visual part of this new feature, you also go one step further, you actually perform the captioning in the background. And this is likely going to help them have a better experience. And also, if you need to know how they interact or how they respond to the outcome, then it would be like recommend to use this method instead. And both of these methods would give you quite high accuracy in terms of how the customer is actually going to respond to the new feature or product. In terms of running the experiment, there's a experiment stack that we use here at Clipchamp that I would recommend. So we use app queues to create the likes of those fake door experiments without any development involvement. I'm sure everyone here that works in product would know that developers are, they're super busy and they've usually got better things to do than running sticky tape experiments. So having something that's a visual editor is quite handy. Google Optimize. So this is completely free for up to 5 experiments at the same time for sample randomization as well as experiment reporting. And last but not least, there's Amplitude. So Amplitude is probably one of the most popular tools that we use here at Clipchamp. We use it for product analytics. And in the experiment context, you can use it to understand the bigger picture for the impact. So you're not just looking at revenue conversion, you're also looking at things like activation retention and how does it impact the usage of other type of features, for example. So this is like the real nerdy step, right? This is analysis, the very last step. And you've done all of the hard work so far. If you don't do the analysis properly, everything else is in vain. I won't go into too much technical details, but there's probably 4 key concepts that you need to understand when you analyze an experiment. The first one you've probably heard of, statistically significant. So all that really means is you have to make sure that the sample size is big enough and the results are dependable. They're not just by random chance. The second concept is a null hypothesis. So a null hypothesis is really just the no change version of the hypothesis you came up with. So it just means that, hey, there's absolutely no change to people's revenue conversion behavior once you've launched captions. And the p-value rejects or accepts the null hypothesis. So what you're looking for the p-value is something that's quite low, like 5% or 0.05. That's quite acceptable of a range in product land, unless you're building a rocket, in which case you'll probably need a few more decimals. But so for the p-value, if it's lower, then you know that it's more likely you can reject the null hypothesis that this new feature you've launched or this new product that you're building will likely, move the metrics. And last but not least, confidence interval. So confidence interval is really just a range of values with lower and upper bounds. And if it's largely positive, then that means the result of the variant is positive. So back to the caption example, a confidence interval might look like 5 to 10% of additional users will be upgrading to a paid plan. So you have to be quite careful when you're running experiments, especially if it's like a business critical metric, because confidence interval is a range. You never really get like an absolute binary result. So even when your experiment result is telling you there's no change, generally speaking, there's probably a minor change because of the interval, right? So make sure you're careful if it's a really important metric you're moving. The other, I guess, like a few other best practices that's worth mentioning if your product is in B2C, you have to make sure that you're testing for an entire week, even if it's statistically significant, since customers will probably behave differently depending on the day of the week or the weekend. And if you're testing with existing customers, then you should probably test for at least 3 weeks, because there's this thing called novelty effect, yet another cognitive bias that we all have. So when an existing customer sees something new, they'll likely behave differently to they normally would for a few weeks before they settle down. Now, once you have the results, you can then take this data and you can actually calculate the return on investment. And then you can work with a team to decide, should you build it? And if you do, like, how much effort should we actually invest into this? So it gets quite quantitative. And don't stop there. The most important part is sharing the learnings. Like, you can't just, don't like huddle your the learnings that you gain in product research and just share it, right? Learnings is like glitter, you've got to spread it everywhere. So everyone at Clipchamp knows that I'm the residential data nerd, and I used to share a lot of graphs and charts, too many graphs and charts. The thing is, what I've learned over the last 2 years is that 80% of experiments will either be inconclusive or they'll fail. And it can sometimes feel like you haven't learned very much after hundreds and hundreds of experiments and you've presented thousands of charts. So my advice nowadays is don't just show graphs and charts. Recall your favorite story or movie or TV show, be it, I don't know, Iron Man or one of these. How well do you think you know the main character? Like, do you feel like you can maybe predict how they would behave or what they would say in a given situation? And this, my friends, is the black magic of storytelling. And this is actually our mission here at Clipchamp as well, to empower anyone to tell stories worth sharing. But so the point of, I guess, like telling stories is extremely entrenched in our human evolution, right? It's more so than the opposable thumb, I would argue. Opposable thumbs let us hang on, and stories tell us what to hang on to. Now, any good story would contain a featured hero. At Clipchamp, we use these data-driven personas, which we actually created most recently in the last 4 months. And we update them as we learn new things from our learnings. So our personas, unlike traditional personas, don't include any demographic information, but instead they talk about motivations, behaviors, characteristics, and personality traits that are unique to the persona. They're all backed by data from the research that we do, and we update them. We don't just sort of leave them in the corner collecting dust. And also, any good story would contain a hero's journey. So we create these job maps here. Some of you may have heard of this concept. It's not really a journey map, so don't confuse the concept with a customer journey map. Instead, they map out the person's job to be done and their problems step by step, basically cataloging every single need and pain point a persona may have. And here's an example of one of our really important personas. I won't go into too much detail, but Frankie is one of our heroes here at Clipchamp. He's an ordinary micro business owner, and he would love to be perceived as a thought leader in his field. So every day after his morning coffee, he'd go through his backlog of ideas he noted down for videos and decide on one. He'd then record and edit the videos. Along this video adventure, captioning is the biggest monster he has to slay. And this is where we come in and we give him the right tools, right? So in summary, how do you build awesome products with data? Well, first of all, you start with and finding an unmet need in mostly qualitative research by talking to your customers. And then you work with a team, and once you have a solution, you experiment to validate and quantify the return for the solution. And then you capture the learnings in data-driven personas and a job map. And last but not least, tell a story to everyone at your company. And at this point in time, everyone at your company becomes a mind-reading sidekick. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anna. I really appreciated that. I'm pretty focused on product-led growth in my reading at the moment. So it was perfect timing to hear how you're kind of embedding that in a practical sense. I think a lot of us in the community are in established businesses that have certain targets, and we just aren't. We're starting to build those programs that allow us to pick up the value and build that ultimate kind of lifetime value over their lifetime. So thank you so much for that. I don't know why I'm doing this introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. I wanted to welcome our third speaker, Senior Product Manager at Clipchamp, and our APAC Regional Coordinator for ProductTank, Jase Clamp. Let me do the proper bio, the proper intro. So he is a community leader and a product leader as well, and has been working with product management field with SaaS platforms across the US and Australia for 15 years. His dream is to see Australian-owned digital companies be amongst the top 10 global market cap companies in the next 10 years. And he believes good product management can unlock this. He's currently working as a senior product manager here at Clipchamp and coordinating the community here in APAC as well. I'm really excited to get the chance to, I think we all get the chance to hear Jase not just moderate, but share his journey at Clipchamp, and hopefully that touches on some of his other journeys along the way. So welcome, Jase.
Thanks very much for having me. Yeah, this is my first legit talk at ProductTank, so I'm so excited. I did a Pecha Kucha, like a 5-minute quickie, like at a Christmas party like 2 years ago, and that's it. I'd just be really curious to know who is dialing in from outside of Brisbane. Just pop it in the chat. I'm just really, really curious about that, where we've got some remotes kind of dialing in from. Yes, so I want to talk to you about a bit more on the research side, the discovery research, right? So there's different, all sorts of different types of research. I think I'd be preaching to the choir if I said that research is the lifeblood of good product. You know, I think when I was doing some of the promo thought of the day type stuff I do on LinkedIn, I was saying it's sort of like trying to go paint a house without the paint, you know, just going to whip it up out of nowhere type thing. This resource, Christian Rohr, do a Google. This is the types of research kind of mapped. So Anna showed the quadrants before. There's just so much good stuff that we have in our toolkit to leverage. You know, I'm going to be focusing right on like the lower left. I personally kind of like it there. I really enjoy early stage products, kind of new discovery type stuff. I'm going to be talking about discovery interviews and what we've been doing at Clipchamp to uplift what we're calling, and what many are calling, research ops. So research ops as an area of practice, research operations. So if you're looking for some ideas of how you can scale research, interviews, discovery type research at your company, just do a Google for that. There's swaths of people talking about all the kit and stuff they're using to manage this process. A good place to start is why. What triggers the need for this type of discovery research? Alex mentioned I've been looking after mobile at Clipchamp, and there's also some new spaces like with our partnerships that we're looking at as well, which are new for us. So whenever you come across a new area of product that you want to move into, and we've also been having discussions about who our customers are now, but because we're in these strategic discussions, we're talking about who we want our customers to be next. You know, like now, next, later type of discussion. So we kind of came across that the next customers were a little different to our now customers. Like if you're a product manager and you're looking after a mature product, got to talk to your current customers, really focus on retention, right? So this sort of discovery research was prompted by sort of moving into new segments. Think of it like a pipeline. You know, like when you're doing sales, you've got, you know, your acquisition and conversion and all that. And what we did at Clipchamp is we thought of it as a pipeline as well. So really starting with, you know, okay, we realize now we need a campaign. Let's define that campaign. So just like Anna was saying, like stating a hypothesis, right? And then also like having a dialogue internally. Like one of the phrases I've used is we're going to draw a really crisp line around a target profile, a kind of customer that we want to talk to. And then it's all about managing that pipeline and about thinking, well, how are we going to recruit for those types of people? If you are in the position that it just so happens the kind of people you want to talk to are kind of like your next customers, you might have a certain percentage of them that you can look in your user database for. But then where do you go maybe once you've kind of run through that? You know, so we've been on a journey trying to solve this problem. I started just trying to solve it myself. Looking on LinkedIn, you know, I'm going to find a certain profile of people, you know, and I realized it takes a long time. And as I tried to do this myself, I realized what I was doing was sort of really kind of recruitment, biz dev type stuff. So I got a copy of LinkedIn subscription for LinkedIn Recruiter. I'm using that, and I'm getting that just for the message credits, just so I can cold reach out to people. Then I realized, oh, I need to do message crafting, right? Because I realized I've got a pipeline. I'm doing cold reach out to people. I really want to talk to these type of people. I developed my hypothesis, my profiles and targets. You know, I want to reach out to our expert Frankies out there. I want to find authors, coaches, consultants, whatever it is, right? Those who are sharing, you know, their content to kind of support their lead gen and their consulting and stuff like that. I want to learn about their challenges and pain points. And so I built like sort of this doc with all these different versions of messaging and would actually adjust based on what was working best. So kept iterating that messaging, and I'd have like sort of different types of messages that I would use based on the different profile, doing little tricks like if there's any kind of personal connection or reference or anything like that, putting that in like one of the top lines of the message, just to try and boost that. Sending them also to a booking portal where they could actually integrate with my calendar and book an interview, right? So what we've done in terms of like incentives, we said, look, it's 20 to 30 minutes. So as a principal, we feel like we can have a conversation. We can do discovery in between 20 and 30 minutes. There's other types of interviews like switch interviews and things like that, where, you know, it's more extensive, more in depth, right? So I ran through that. Then I started to like reach out to the rest of the company saying, hey, you know, friends, relatives, whoever, you know, do you know anyone of this type? And we kind of, it's almost like you're starting a business. You know, like when you do a startup, you go to all your friends and your relatives and you just try to sell to them. And then you kind of run through that. You like run out of people. It's a bit like that. So I got some amazing support, some amazing references from people internally getting their ex-colleagues and stuff in the door to talk to me. And then I was saying to the rest of the org, I still need more support with this. So then recruitment, I'm having a conversation with them and they're saying, we kind of have the tools. We're already in this mode of going out and looking for people of certain profile. You know, it's a sizable team, you know, we're growing as a company, right? So they're volunteering. Like we had one member of our HR team that said, I'll put a day a week in on this to help because they saw how valuable it is. I think that's a testimony to how awesome the culture is here, that even though it wasn't like, it's not in my job description, you know, they were willing to pitch in and help, which I think was awesome. Where we've ended up now is we're actually got a 3-day-a-week part-time role for research assistant to really boost and support this, right? Some of that, like I'm a product person. I thought, well, maybe I can find a product to solve this. So we looked online, we used userinterviews.com, which is, I think it's really good for research mechanisms like a little bit down the line where, you know, maybe if you wanted to search on demographics, not on behaviors or things like that, it could work. We've got Askable here in Brisbane. We're so proud to have them here. They're fantastic. But, you know, these companies, they have their pools of, you know, like whether it be 100,000 or, you know, 400,000 people that are engaged. Like what I found though, was the type of people that we wanted to talk to were sophisticated professionals and high value type people. Those kind of people are not the type to be kind of pulled in by an ad for user testing and to hang out on those platforms waiting for like a testing gig. So when I tried those platforms, it was sort of a lot of effort, not a lot of return for connecting with the kind of value of people I wanted to find, but probably good for sort of testing a bit further down the chain. So then we do the interview. So I was using Calendly to book interviews. As a product team, we actually have a shared calendar for interviews and they all go in. The reason that we actually have that is because we have an approach where one of us will lead the interview. One of us will do all the talking. So when the person actually connects in, we start out with our, you know, probably 5 or 10 second, just in case you don't know, Clipchamp is blah, 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 this is us. The purpose of our talk today is research. And we want to get to know you a little bit more. Before I start, I just want to ask, is it okay if I record this for our internal purposes? So always asking for permission to record, and we do record them. And if they say no, we don't record them, right? It felt a bit weird to do that at the start, but you know, we got into it. The other person that's actually tuned in from the product team is in a Google Doc, right? So if I have someone else, they're dialed into the Google Doc, they're scribing for me. I'm asking the questions. They'll probably start by copying and pasting the person's name, their LinkedIn, the bucket of questions that we actually had for this campaign, our hypothesis, so I can pull from those. They'll be typing as furiously as possible. They'll actually add questions. If they come across, if they start to sense a theme, they'll actually help me, and then I can ask the questions. The reason that we do it that way is just to respect the interviewee's time and to just to make it seem like comfortable, right? So it's just, you're only having to really connect with one person and you can, you know, feel comfortable with that versus like a panel of 2 or 3 people like trying to like jump in and like ask questions from all different perspectives. So when I'm running the interview, like I have something I'm trying to get to. we've got principles where it's like boils down to not leading. All right, so you're not trying to inject your own bias into those questions. Like Anna said, not asking things like, what, would you want this feature? Like they're going to say yes. Maybe trying, like, if you have to propose a solution, would you pay for this? Or, what have you done in the past? Where have you struggled? Stuff like that. But essentially, it kind of boils down to the ethos of being a good journalist. I don't know if you've seen this story, True Story. It's a movie, James Franco, the other guy, Jonah something. It's one of the beginning scenes. He's like giving this guy a 20 that he's interviewing, like, would you say this? Here's a $20 bill. Just try and avoid that. So after we do interviews, we always kind of do a check, a little retro, and it could just be like a personal kind of thinking through, like, what did I lead? Was it really, honest? Or we'll just talk about it. All right. So always doing a little retro. And then we've got the analysis. So we're actually, in terms of a pipeline, it's been challenging. We've had like I've got a spreadsheet with like a dozen, 2 dozen tabs with like, did we contact them? Did we offer a gift card? We offer like a $50 AED incentive, which is like $25 US, but it's something, so we got to keep track of all that. Once we do an interview, I go into another spreadsheet and then, one of our staff sends that off, and I'll follow up with a code and ask for other, references. Who else can we talk to like you? If it was a good chat, like some of them, because we're doing really good recruitment up front, it's about 95% like very good quality conversations, but we do get the occasional oddball. I spoke to someone in a fluffy gown the other day, and they had their hood on. We get those occasional ones that just kind of eke through. But anyway, how do we share this stuff? So I'm just going to quickly pull up Confluence. We just shove it all in Confluence. So after the Google Doc, paste into Confluence. This is a campaign page. So this is one of the ones we ran where I've used the blur tool. So you can't see like all the info, like the people's names and stuff. But it's sort of under this page, it's sort of rolled up in Confluence. Like, here's the actual people's names. Here's some of the data we were trying to collect, answers to questions, things like that. And this is what one of our pages looked like. So we try and, Confluence is a wiki, just tabular data, very, very lightweight, but we just kind of, we can kind of roll it up and aggregate it a little bit like that. Just keeping track of their target persona mapping, what competitors they said they were using, just kind of stuff like that we track across all the interviews. And then we have campaign quant that we're, questions we're trying to answer, do a little bit of jobs to be done. We use this quote capturing. So if we get really good quotes, we'll kind of roll them up in the little tasks, so you can aggregate those in Confluence. We have like this mega page of quotes in Confluence. It's just like high info. If I get a really good one, generally what I'll do is I'll pop it on Slack with the summary, with the quotes, with a link to the video. And I may even attach a little intro myself saying what was good about it. So that, I think, is most of what I wanted to cover. Yeah, the analysis, the sharing, but it's not worth much unless you're including and disseminating it through the organization. So with that, I'll hand back to Lou.
Great. So I'm opening the floor for Q&A. We'll run to the hour, and then if there's still demand for Q&A and people are happy to stay on, we'll run a little bit over. So have I got any willing participants for questions? I'm not sure I'm seeing anything too. I think everyone's just kind of been really digesting.
So my question, mainly targeted at Jase, is how many users are you trying to target, or how do you know when you've got enough information?
Yeah, so I'd find that I tend to start to be able to detect a signal on common pain points after about 5. I always target 10 and do between 10 and 20 per campaign or whatever hypothesis or segment that we want to focus on.
Thank you.
Great. I've got a question for Dean. I'll ask on his behalf. Jase, do you recommend using the main visionary for the product as the interviewer, or could you use a recruiter style person to follow a script?
I think sort of following a script can be problematic. So I'd say, someone from probably the product lead in that area, or someone working in product in that area on the product team. And the script is a good starting point. Like, I always try to have questions lined up ahead of time that make sense to ask, because they align with the area I'm exploring and the hypothesis. But as I see clear themes progressing, I might get to the place where I'm like, I kind of am quite clear on that signal, and I know that, but I might want to kind of pull on a thread in another area. So I think, I heard another product leader in our community use the phrase embrace the suck, which he was specifically talking about interviewing skills, just getting in there and having a go and just continually trying to retro and improve. But I find some of the best insights just come where you're not sort of robotically just asking why, but you're really thinking. And this is why it's good not to have to scribe and ask the questions, because it's quite an intense time. But you're thinking, what actually was the problem, and you're digging in, right? So there's a bit of script, but there's often probably more freeform.
I might see if I can kick this to Anna. Greg was talking a little bit about your pricing strategy and how you end up determining pricing and growth in the product.
Yeah. So what we did here is we actually worked with an external company who specializes in pricing, and they use this methodology called conjoint analysis. And what that essentially does is, instead of some of the other methods that are out there, it almost simulates the experience of a purchase where you have multiple different feature inclusions and then pricing points. So there's like, you almost design biases out of, this particular research method.
And that's done right at the kind of add-ons in-app, that's done to that sort of granularity.
It's not quite in app. This is sort of where we're aiming. Like, in my head, this is the ideal state we want to be able to test pricing strategy and pricing methods in app. But this was done internally within existing customers and externally with prospects that matches the profiles that we're looking for. Great
insights. And how are you doing your experiment and interviewing within your sprints within the planning, your development cycles and sprints?
Yep. So I'd say we try to, for the bigger initiatives, we try to stay quite far ahead of the development sprints, right? So like the product management team would be 3 months most of the time ahead. So we would probably know if something is validated or invalidated 3 months ahead of the time. For the smaller initiatives, that can run in experiments, that can run in campaigns sporadically.
Cool. Any other questions, guys? We're coming up to the end of the hour, so I appreciate some people are going to drop off, but we're still taking questions.
A new question.
Yeah, so just to kind of touch a little bit on what you were saying, Jase, roughly how much time should we be dedicating to research, depending on, I guess, the stage of the business and kind of week and month? Is there something that you found is the return on investment?
Jase?
Oh, Anna,
I can tell you my opinion. I think 30 to 40% of a product manager's time should be spent, talking to customers and having direct dialogues with customers, or even running experiments.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it breaks down to percentage wise, but like in terms of a manageable pace, 2 to 3 a day is awesome. But there's the documentation and follow up and analysis. That's probably quite a bit. Yeah.
So you're at a certain stage in your development now, but obviously our community is full of people that have much smaller organizations and are part of bigger organizations. Having been across a couple of sized organizations, is that roughly a guide regardless of where you are?
Yeah, I would say
30%?
roughly. Yeah.
Yep. And Jase, you touched on this, but I'm happy for anyone to answer. So you've got some fantastic customer feedback coming into the business. This is a question from Peter. What are your rituals to share it throughout the company?
Yeah, so like I said, we share some of it on Slack, and just try and pepper it out because it's, everyone's quite busy. And Anna's hosts a product forum. We do it once a month. Is that right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, team at Clipchamp. You've given us a lot to take away in terms of where you are and what you're actually actively doing. And I think there's a lot for us to take on board back to our crews.